In this video, we're going to be looking at the big ideas for section 4.3, and it's really filled with a lot of terms, so get ready to write down a bunch of definitions. Let's start off with this first one, which would be an observational study. So in an observational study, there's no treatment that is imposed. We just observe. So there's no treatment that is being forced upon or imposed upon the test subjects. So that would be an observational study. Now, the second definition that we have here is an experiment. And in an experiment, treatments are imposed, and this also allows for causation. So the difference between an observational study and an experiment is that the test subjects, if you will, they are given a treatment. There is something imposed upon them. They're not choosing to be a part, they're not choosing what is imposed upon them. It just happens, okay? Whereas in an observational study, we're just observing. So let's dig a little bit deeper into experiments. And we're going to look at this one and look at this definition is the explanatory variable. So the definition would be that an explanatory variable is used to predict the outcomes. Now, in some experiments, there's more than one explanatory variable. And if we have more than one explanatory variable, we would call those factors. Now, even within the factors, we can have different levels. Maybe there's more than one level within each factor. We're going to dig into this a little bit deeper here in just a little bit. Another definition that we want to look at is the response variable. And we should know that the response variable are the outcomes of the experiment or the observational study. So let's keep going. Our next definition that we need to know is the treatments. Now, a treatment is what is done to the participants. Okay, whatever is being imposed upon them, those would be called the treatments. If we dig a little bit deeper into our definitions, we talk about experimental units. And the experimental units are the what or who the treatment is imposed upon. So if we have treatments, they are imposed upon the experimental units. Now, if we're talking about human beings, those are sometimes called test subjects as well. But if it's not humans, you would call them experimental units. Or even if it is humans, you could call them experimental units as well. The last definition that we have here is confounding variables. And these are variables that are not controlled within the experiment that may also have an effect on the outcomes of the experiment. So we're not controlling these variables. They are not a part of the factors. They're not a part of the explanatory variables, but they might also have an outcome or an effect on the outcomes. So that would be called a confounding variable. Now, I want to go just a little bit deeper into these definitions, especially the factors and levels. And I want to show you this example. So let's say I was doing an experiment and I was growing plants. Doesn't matter what the plant is, I'm growing plants. And I decide that I want to see what effect does the amount of fertilizer and the type of water have on my plants. So the amount of fertilizer is one variable, one explanatory variable. The other explanatory variable is the type of water that I'm going to use. So we would call these factors. The two factors that I have are the amount of fertilizer and the type of water. Well, within the amount of fertilizer, I'm going to have some levels. I don't want to put the same amount of fertilizer in each one of the plants, so I decide to do 1 tablespoon of fertilizer for some of the plants and 1 teaspoon of fertilizer in the other plants. So these are 2 levels within this one factor. Well, what about the water? Well, I'm going to use 2 different types of water. I'm going to use tap water and distilled water. So these are not the same thing. There are two levels within the type of water that I want to use. So now I have two levels for the fertilizer factor. I have two levels for the type of water factor. And when I combine all of these different levels, I get my treatments. So I actually have 4 treatments. Some of my flowers are going to get 1 tablespoon of fertilizer with tap water. Some are going to get 1 tablespoon of fertilizer with distilled water. Some are going to get 1 teaspoon of fertilizer with tap water and 1 teaspoon of fertilizer with distilled water. So this is an example of factors, levels, and treatments and how it all fits together. Hopefully this helps you understand, and hopefully you have a great day.